Welcome to CareStream Dental Online Learning. This training recording will demonstrate how to use recalls in the R4 Plus practice management system. By the end of this recording, you should understand running the recalls, running recare, updating recall settings, and updating recall templates. Running the recalls. To run recalls in R4 Plus, from the appointment diary, access the View menu at the top of the window, then click Recall Patients. Starting at the top left-hand side of the window, it is possible to run recalls for each individual provider's patients. If you've got a very large database, it may be helpful to untick the option for all users. Then, select an individual provider to run only their recalls. Alternatively, ticking the All Users option will allow you to run recalls for the entire database in one go. In the middle of the window is the recall status. Starting from the top, you see the option for Recall Appointment Made, Notification Letter Due. This is used to send out reminders to patients via letter, informing them they've already got a recall appointment that has been booked. Beneath that is Non-Booked Recalls, Recall Letter Not Sent. This covers patients who are now due their next appointment, which has not been booked into the diary, and have not yet been sent a recall letter. These are the recalls. Beneath that, the final option is for Non-Booked Recalls, Letters Sent. This allows you to search for patients who've already been sent a recall letter but haven't actually responded. However, there is a new way to do this, using Springboard and Recare. We'll come on to that later on in this session. In this example, the option being selected is Non-Booked Recalls, Recall Letter Not Sent. On the top right-hand side of the window is the option to display recalls up to the end of which month we wish to run the recalls for. Select the month you want to run the recalls for, then click Search. This displays all the patients that currently are due a recall on your R4 Plus system. To send recalls out, highlight the displayed list of patients, then click Send Recall Message. This starts the recalls off, and sends any SMS messages that are due to go out, any emails that are required, and of course prints any letters that need to be printed as well. Click Select All underneath Send Recall Message, to highlight the entire list in one go. Consider though, depending on the size of your database, this can be a lot of documents to send to the printer in a single batch. So it's always recommended to highlight a few patients at a time, by left-clicking and dragging over the list, then clicking Send Recall Message. Once a patient has been issued a recall, they will be removed from this list, as they are categorized now as patients who have now been sent a letter. If the list is too long when loading this window, limit the displayed results to a restricted number of months. For this example, December is selected for the Display Recalls up to the end of option. By entering 1 month in the box, R4 Plus will only display December's recall patients. By entering 2 months in the box, you can have R4 Plus display December and November's patients. Assuming you're running the recalls every month, having multiple months in there should not display patients from previous months, as they would already have been included in previous recall runs. Remember that this list is currently being limited, so unticking this box will display a full list of every patient that needs to be recalled. This could go back a long way in your R4 Plus system, if patients, for whatever reason, missed their initial recall, back when they were actually due. To recap briefly, to send your recalls off, highlight the patient you wish to communicate with, and click Send Recall Message. Running Recare. Once you've finished running your recalls, you might want to check on patients who have previously been sent a recall. From the main menu of R4 Plus, access the Springboard menu at the top of the window. Looking at the KPI for Recare at the top in the middle, you can see in the current month how many patients were due to recall, and how many patients actually booked an appointment. Also shown is a distribution of how those communications were sent out to your patients. You then have the option there for how many patients didn't book, which you could then click on to get a list of all your patients that were previously communicated with and you haven't booked their appointment. From here it is possible to click on a patient's name. Beneath their contact and communication information are the options to send a patient a text message, send an email, print a letter or mark that you have phoned them, if the reception team are going to go through and call to your patients. This is to work through one patient at a time. Alternatively, If you tick the boxes on the left-hand side, it's possible to contact selected patients. This will rerun the recalls for those patients, using the patient's preferred communication type. Updating recall settings. There are two areas to update the patient's recall settings. The first is the global settings. In the appointment diary, access the View menu at the top of the window, then select Recall Settings. Here you see how your recall settings are currently set up. Please note any changes to this window will require your R4 system to recalculate it itself. This can take a long time and does mean that all users should be logged out of the R4 system while it takes place, so it's best to do at the end of the day. On the top left-hand side of the window you see the options that allow different recall settings per scheme. If this is ticked, you can select the scheme for which you would like to set recalls up from the drop-down list box. For example, you might want to have your private patients coming back every 6 months, and your NHS patients every 12 months. This can be done. Alternatively, if you want every patient, regardless of scheme, to have the same recall period, leave this box unticked. There are separate sections for dental recalls and hygiene recalls. First, dental recalls. Under Recalls Style, is the option there for manual. This turns off the automatic recall date for a patient, meaning each individual patient must be manually set to when you would like them to be recalled in the R4 recall system. This option is not recommended. Beneath that is Automatic Fixed Recall Period. This sets your patient's recall period to be the period displayed on the right-hand side adjacent to examination. This will set every single patient to a 6-month recall period across the entire R4 system. Alternatively, there is the option for Automatic Variable Recall Period. With this option selected, your patients are set to wherever is displayed here. However, when a patient completes their course of treatment, R4 asks the dentist what they would like to set the patient's recall period to, and it can be changed patient by patient. Beneath that, is the options for NICE guidelines. With NICE guidelines selected, when a patient completes a course of treatment, the system will ask the dentist to complete a questionnaire. Based on that questionnaire, the R4 system will then recommend a recall period that the dentist can either agree or disagree with. This will update your NHS claim with the NICE guideline details. Beneath that, we have the option for care pathways. Care pathways, again, like NICE guidelines, allows you to run a detailed questionnaire on a patient's record, asking many questions, which will then set a recall period for a patient. This was part of a pilot scheme that never went ahead. Carestream recommend either NICE guidelines as your NHS recall option, or Automatic Variable Recall Period. Displayed here are the default recall periods. All of your patients are set to this value. Select from the drop-down list whatever you want your default recall period to be. This is currently set to 6 months, but if it would change to 12, it means every patient would now be on a 12-month recall period, unless manually changed. On the right-hand side are the recall basis options. This is what flags up your recalls in your R4 system. Completed the exam appointment. As it says, this will be whenever a patient completes an examination. If the patient comes in for fillings and treatment after their examination, they are not taken into consideration with your recalls, only from the patient's examination date. Any completed appointment. Whenever a patient completes an appointment, this is what flags the recall date. So if the patient comes in for an examination and then multiple fillings and other treatments, it will be the final appointment, not the initial examination, that is taken into consideration. Completion of last course. When the patient completes their course of treatment, it will be then the recall period after that point. It does mean the patient will not get a recall until that course of treatment has been closed. Examination treatment. This requires a dentist to add a 101 clinical examination to your patient's treatment plan, and complete it. Once it's been completed, the patient will then be recalled from the recall period after the point of completion. The course of treatment can stay open for this, but it's important that the dentist remembers to add on the examination treatment, which is required to flag the recall. Hygiene recalls. Again, just like the dental recalls, we have the option for manual, automatic fixed recall period, and automatic variable recall period. Select the appropriate option for your practice. Again, here you can select how often a patient needs to be recalled for hygiene. And then we've got recall basis, the same as for dental recalls, completed exam appointments, any complete appointment, or completion of last course. For hygiene recalls, CareStream recommends any completed appointment, as most patients would come in to have a clean with the hygienist, rather than an examination. At the bottom of the window is an option for send one combined communication to patients with dental and hygiene recalls in the same month. This can reduce the amount of letters you send out to patients. So rather than sending out 2 letters, one for dental and one for hygiene, this will combine both the letters into a single document. Once you've made any changes to this window, click Apply in the bottom right-hand corner. Then click Close. If required, R4 may prompt you to recalculate your system, which needs to be left running overnight. More recall settings that can be defined by you are found in the patient's personal record, specific to that patient only. Access a patient's personal record. Click on the Calms tab. On the right-hand side, under Recall Information, you see what the current patient's recall status is. Next to that, an option there for details. These are the settings for your individual patient. Everything demonstrated in this recording concerns dentist recalls. However, if the patient has Enable Hygiene Recalls selected, you'll see the tab becomes available for hygiene recalls. There is an option here to enable and disable dental recalls for the patient entirely. This means the patient will no longer receive any communications from the R4 system regarding recalls. Alternatively, rather than turning off recalls completely, there is the option for suspend recalls until next completed appointment. This can be useful if a patient doesn't want to be contacted at the moment, but would like to come back at some point. This leaves it up to the patient to book their next appointment, then once they've completed it, their recalls can be switched on automatically and the patient is then included in the specified recall period. Beneath that, you see the patient's recall date. This is calculated based on whatever your recall settings are. It is possible to set the date manually on this window, and enter a new date if required. However, this checkbox does not automatically deselect after it's been changed, so it's important to only use Set Date manually if you're planning on manually updating this patient's recalls in future. Beneath that, you see the option for Override Default Recall Period. If you've got the option for Automatic Variable Recall Period set in your recall settings, you can select this option and change this patient's recall period to whatever is required, from 1 month up to 36 months. This is an individual setting, so this patient will return every 6 months, whereas you could have a different patient come back every 9 months, for example. Beneath that, you see Recall Information, telling you what the patient's current recall status is. This patient has not booked a recall and has not been sent a recall communication. It is shown that they're not actually going to be recalled until June 2025, and that is based on their recall details beneath. After making any changes to this window, click OK at the bottom. Updating recall templates. To modify the recall templates in the R4 system, on the main menu, click Document Manager. At the top of the window, select the option for Standard Letter Templates. There are multiple types of recall templates in the R4 system. Let us begin by looking at the adult templates. There are multiple recall letters that can be updated. There is an adult recall letter for dental recalls, the hygiene recall letter for hygiene recalls, and the adult combined recare letter, which combines the two into a single template, for an adult patient due in for both their dental and hygiene appointment, in the same month. That is the same for the child templates, where you see the child recall letter, child hygiene recall letter, and the child combined recare letter. And the same for group templates, where you see the group head dental recall, group hygiene recall, and the group head combined recall letter. To modify any of these letters, double-click on the template and Microsoft Word opens. Once Word has opened, make modifications to the template. Left-click and enter any details you require. To add merge fields for patient-specific information, at the top of the window, click Add Insert, then click Insert R4 field. Select from the drop-down boxes the fields that you require to draw patient information into your letter template. For example, add in the patient's full name merge field. When editing this template, these fields show as Dear Patient Title, Patient Full Name, Patient Surname. But when being used to create a patient recall letter, These fields are populated with the actual patient information from your R4 Plus system, so for example, Dear Mr. John Smith. Continue to update your letter, then click on the Save icon to save any changes. As well as modifying the letter, new SMS and email templates can be created. At the bottom of the window, click the button for either New SMS Document or New Email Document. R4 Plus asks you to name the template. Enter the template name, then click OK. Start making changes to the template. If merge fields are required for either an SMS or email document, right-click to view and select the same fields that were added to the letter in the previous example. Again, for example, add the patient's forename field. Add any further information or merge fields that are required for this email template. Click OK in the bottom right hand of the window. To edit the template at a later point, on the right-hand side of the window, click the Edit button next to any of your templates. This concludes the R4 Plus Recalls recorded class. Thank you.